Have you ever found yourself stuck in a pattern that you were unable to break? You may need a small escape even when you're exhausted following a long day. But after that, you feel worn out, empty, or even worse, ashamed. You know it's not helpful, yet it's like this invisible force drags you back. Why do I keep doing this? You might be wondering, what's wrong with me? But you're not alone. Many individuals struggle with this, but what if I told you that there is a better way? A strategy that will help you break this loop and build a stronger, more organized life. There is more to this video than just basic self-help activities. This has to do with altering your thought process. This relates to Stoicism. And trust me when I say that once you understand these concepts, you will never have the same perspective on the behavior of masturbation. Before we begin, kindly take a moment to hit the subscribe button and like this video. The things we're going to talk about have the power to change your life, not just by helping you kick a habit, but also by improving your relationships, mental clarity, and overall well-being. If you stick with me through to the end, you won't regret it. Let me introduce you to a friend of mine. His name is Alex. He worked hard throughout the day and spent the evenings with friends, giving the impression that he led a highly balanced existence. But the one thing that hung over him all the time was his continuous battle with masturbation. This was not always the case. It was merely an intermittent method of relaxation at first, but ultimately the odd indulgence became a habit. Additionally, that habit became a crutch. Every time Alex felt nervous, upset, or even a bit down, he would turn to the one thing that made him feel better for a moment. However, as time passed, a strange thing started to happen. Alex started to notice that he was feeling more worn out than usual, less motivated at work, and even a little disconnected from people. He knew something wasn't right, but he couldn't identify it. It wasn't until he learned about Stoic ideas that the clouds started to clear. In the end, he realized that the seemingly harmless behavior was keeping him from realizing his full potential. 5 negative effects of masturbation. 1. Loss of energy and vitality. I want to take you on a journey. Imagine spending a beautiful evening sitting with a loved one, possibly your spouse. You can feel the spark in the air, the warmth of their presence, and the magnetic pull of connection. It seems like you two could take on the world because of your innate energy flow. However, what if I told you that while you're sitting there, everything you've worked for, including your energy, vitality, and sense of self-worth, could be ripped away from you in an instant? I want you to think back to a time when you felt truly energized. Do you remember how that felt? Perhaps it was after working out, having a deep conversation with a loved one, or even accomplishing a personal goal. That drive, the determination to press on, to get past the next challenge, was more than just physical. It was also mental and emotional. When you're feeling happy, you have a reservoir of energy that fuels everything you do. Now think back to the last time you gave in to temptation. Maybe it was a quick release of tension, a moment of indulgence that at the time seemed harmless. But how did you feel about it afterwards? Let me tell you something. After masturbating, your energy levels suddenly drop. This weariness goes beyond just physical exhaustion. Have you ever noticed how your mind appears distant or fuzzy, and your emotions look worn out? It's like someone else has taken a piece of you, and you seem to lose the energy you once had, the chemistry between you and your significant other. It seems dimmer, doesn't it? It's like you're holding on to a piece of something important, but don't have the strength to see it through. I want you to understand that the energy you are using up at that time is more than just a physical loss. It is a deeper drain of your vitality. Every time you participate in the cycle, you are telling yourself that your energy, your own being, is not important enough to store for something greater. What do you have left after that release? Even while you may feel a moment of satisfaction, you know deep down that you have lost something important. You don't have to put up with this, which is wonderful news. If you begin to see your energy as a valuable resource that needs to be safeguarded, you'll feel more connected to your true self. You won't be tempted to waste it on fleeting pleasures. Instead, You'll find that you're saving it for the people and events that truly matter, the ones who require your whole being, your whole energy. Therefore, consider this: when you're with someone you love and working toward a meaningful goal, do you not want to feel that energy boost that makes everything else disappear? Avoid letting that energy fall into negative habits that simply drain you. Instead, take it back and utilize it to create the life you deserve. 2. Decreased motivation and focus. Now let's talk about motivation. Have you ever had a day where everything seems to come together? Your goals are within grasp, your mind is clear, and you're ready to take on the world. Don't we all crave that feeling? So what happens when you start to see that? Despite your best attempts, the spark is fading. Your energy is exhausted, your motivation is gone, and your focus is gone. In actuality, our minds are like gardens. When we give children constructive ideas, constructive behavior, and a sense of purpose, they thrive. But when we start planting seeds of distraction, like masturbating, our garden starts to wither. It's not just about temporarily losing motivation. It's about a significant long-term shift in your viewpoint. I would like you to think about a time in your life when you were determined to accomplish a goal. You might have had a project at work, a goal to better yourself, or even a desire to be the best partner you could be in a relationship. Do you recall how intensely focused you were? Every decision you made backed up that goal, and every move you took felt intentional. That is motivating at its best. But what happens if you give in to temptation, like masturbating? You become exhausted, as though your mind is unable to cope with the impending obligations. Instead of feeling as driven as you once did, you begin to feel frustrated. When you try to move forward, your mind seems to be trapped in quicksand and keeps getting sidetracked. You have undoubtedly felt regret after giving in to a moment of weakness. I assume you have a busy day ahead of you, but instead of taking on issues head-on, you wind yourself staring at the screen or drifting into thoughtless distractions. That is the result of a distracted mind overtaken by impulsive behavior. However, by training us to focus on the things that we can control, Stoicism offers a solution in this area. You can choose to focus on the important things. You don't have to let your failures control you. Think about it. Every time you resist, you are strengthening your will. Every time you focus on your real goals, your motivation will transform into a force that moves you forward. Take a moment to think about how every time you choose to focus, you are improving your life, relationships, and opportunities. In addition to your production, you're supporting both yourself and the people that rely on you. How much more meaningful could your relationships be if you came with a clear head, a purposeful heart, and an unyielding desire to build something important? 3. Guilt and shame. Now, let's talk about something a little more awkward: guilt and shame. We're not very fond of talking about it, but I promise you it's a subject worth researching. Everyone has stuff they don't always talk about. Everybody knows deep down when they have done anything that goes against their moral convictions. It's also challenging to deal with the emotional impact. Have you ever felt like you were sinking because you gave in to temptation? You feel your stomach drop, and then you suddenly start to doubt yourself. The voice in your head that says, "Why did I do that? I should have greater strength." The remorse starts to give way to shame. You believe that you have failed yourself and let yourself down. And no matter how many times you convince yourself it's okay, that feeling doesn't just go away. Guilt is more than a fleeting emotion. It stays with you, absorbs you, and creates an internal conflict that becomes harder to ignore over time. One of the most important things Stoicism teaches is to live according to our virtues. What does that mean? It means acting with integrity, remaining true to our identity, and aligning our actions with our basic values. Furthermore, every time you give in to an inclination like masturbation, you are not behaving in a way that is consistent with those beliefs. I want you to think about a time when you felt good about yourself. Maybe it was when you were honest with someone you loved, or when you stood by a decision you knew was right. That feeling of pride is a reflection of living by your principles. However, when you act contrary to your convictions, Like giving in to guilt-ridden activities, you feel that disconnect. It's a shame. But the beautiful thing about Stoicism is that it offers a means of salvation. When you make a mistake, you don't have to live with the guilt or the embarrassment. Instead, Stoicism pushes us to accept our humanity, learn from our mistakes, and choose differently the next time. The aim is progress, not perfection. Instead of feeling guilty, picture being able to take a deep breath and forgive yourself. Instead of allowing shame to control your actions, you may own your mistake, learn from it, and go forward with a renewed sense of purpose. There, do you feel the power? That's the freedom that comes from living according to your true values. Therefore, the next time you feel that regret, remember that it's not the end of your story. It's simply a moment to reflect, develop, and gain knowledge. And every step you take brings you one step closer to the life you deserve, one that is full of integrity, power, and self-respect. 4. Disconnection from real relationships. Ever find yourself sitting across from a loved one, like your spouse, a close friend, or even a family member, and felt cut off? Even if you are physically close, it feels like a wall separates you. Even if you're there, your mind are elsewhere and your heart seems far away. You start to see that the excitement, emotion, and spark in those exchanges are fading. What's happening? It's likely that rather than anything the other person did wrong, the relationship is being weakened by something internal. Your inability to fully engage with those around you. You see, when you give in to the temptation to masturbate, especially when it becomes a habit, you're contributing to a cycle of self-gratification that separates you from the real relationships in your life, the sort of emotional investment you usually give to someone you love. It becomes diverted into this solitary habit, which makes you less engaged in your relationships. Think back to a time when you were completely present with someone you love, whether it was through a deep conversation, a shared laugh, or something even more intimate. The enthusiasm you felt in those moments was tremendous, wasn't it? It has a really powerful effect to be truly connected to someone, where your bond is the only thing that matters. But what happens if you engage in actions like masturbating? That sense of inclusion starts to wane. You may not even be conscious of it when you begin to emotionally detach yourself. Your heart and mind are no longer fully dedicated to the partnership as a result of your indulgence in this fleeting self-gratification. Your desire to be close to them starts to fade, and before you know it, you're just going through the motions in your connections with them. Sometimes, without your knowing, this emotional distance might negatively impact your relationships. Now, think about a loved one. In reality, how often do you get along with them? And I don't simply mean sharing space or even wasting time. I mean truly being there mentally, emotionally, and spiritually. When you choose to invest in that relationship, you're putting your entire being on the table. But when you're caught in a vicious cycle of self-gratification, you're denying a part of yourself to someone who truly matters. The issue is that the more you get caught up in these isolating activities, the harder it is to feel connected to other people. You begin to look for fulfillment outside of your sincere relationships. At this moment, the distance increases. It's easy to see how this could cause problems in family dynamics, love relationships, and friendships. Eventually, the people you care about the most may begin to feel ignored, and you may even begin to feel isolated while they are around. But what if there is a way to fix this? What if you could restore that intimacy, that closeness, that desire with the ones that truly matter? Consider reinvesting in the connections that make you happy rather than withdrawing inward. Imagine the joy that results from focusing entirely on the person you love, emotionally and physically, without any outside distractions. Once the cycle is ended, you will not only be there with others, but you will also feel the deep engagement and connection you've long craved. The good news is that you can reclaim that intimacy and fortify your relationships by choosing to concentrate your emotional energy on the people who matter most to you. Which aspect is the best? That isolation won't ever have to happen to you again. 5. Addictive behavior and escalation. Has there ever been a time when you developed a habit with the mindset, "It's no big deal," only to discover that you were locked in a vicious cycle that was harder to break than you initially thought? It starts with something small, a one-time indulgence that suddenly becomes a habit. That routine turns into something bigger and out of your control before you know it. You are not only practicing a habit, you are trapped in an addiction. I understand what you're thinking. Though, how can it be that serious when it's just masturbation? But think about it this way, every time you do this, you're teaching your brain to crave it more. And the more you give in, the harder it gets to stop. Over time, it takes more to get the same satisfaction. Just like any addiction, whether it's to drugs or bad habits, before you know it, you're caught in a never-ending cycle of yearning and release. As your brain starts to crave more frequent indulgences and more intense experiences. Think back to a time in your life when you were in love. Do you remember how thrilling it was? The connection, the chemistry, the excitement of meeting that special someone. Love like that is electric. It ignites something deep within you that gives you a sense of life. Can you imagine how you would feel if that spark started to fade? And the thrill of being with someone was replaced by an inclination that depleted your energy instead of enhancing it? This is what happens when you allow masturbation to become a routine escape. The urge to pursue real intimacy with a partner and the energy to be physically and emotionally present in relationships begin to diminish, and you are forced to rely on something that leaves you feeling empty but provides immediate relief. The brain's need for stimulation rises with habit frequency, pulling you deeper into an addictive cycle. And the impulses begin to intensify as what was once sporadic relief becomes routine. I want you to think about your relationships, especially romantic ones. Have you ever noticed that when you are genuinely invested in someone, your desire for them is strong, real, and fulfilling? However, when you are caught up in compulsive behavior, that sincere desire is diminished, and the immediate gratification of your habit begins to take precedence over the genuine connection with a person. You start to crave the release, the short fix, rather than the emotional connection, which gradually loses its appeal and pushes you to seek out more extreme means of gratifying that urge. This is the dangerous escalation path. If your mind gets used to the pattern, it's hard to stop it. You may start with a minor indulgence, but eventually it's about something much deeper than simply letting go. Addiction develops as your need for stimulation increases. The most important thing to remember is that you can break this pattern. There is still time. What matters most are genuine relationships, genuine intimacy, and strong emotional bonds. You can regain control over your impulses and redirect your focus back to these things, rather than rushing into a useless habit that makes you feel alone. Imagine how much more fulfilling it would be to direct your energies toward building strong bonds with someone who values you. Breaking this cycle is a challenging but worthwhile journey. If you consciously choose to stop engaging in addictive habits and focus on real connections, you will become stronger and more present, and your relationships will be deeper and more fulfilling as a result of having more energy to dedicate to the people you care about, which is more important in the end, a brief moment of independence or a lifetime of genuine connection. You have the ability to make this decision, and every step you take to break this pattern will bring you one step closer to the happiness and love you so wonderfully deserve. 5 tips to break the masturbate. So how can one get out of this loop? How do you regain control and live your life according to Stoic principles? 1. Practice Stoic self-control. Have your impulses and impulsive inclinations ever given you more control over yourself than you would like to admit? Doesn't that feel familiar? You give in when pressure mounts, while knowing that you should be stronger and that you can resist. That little voice in your head says, "Just this once, it won't hurt." But you know deep down that it's a lie. You've probably had this feeling many times when you've relapsed into the same habits. even if you promised yourself that you wouldn't do it. Take a moment to think about one of the most important relationships in your life. It might be a relationship from your past or one you are in right now. Remember the time when everything was brand new, when there was a lot of desire and a fresh bond? The way you felt about that person, the yearning to be close to them, to spend every moment with them, to establish a deeper connection with them, wasn't that sincere? Now picture yourself wasting the same energy used to devote to someone you loved on short-lived, self-gratifying moments. In this case, Stoic self-control is helpful. Stoicism teaches us to resist temptation and maintain our commitment to our values and goals in the face of transient pleasures. This is not about repressing your emotions or becoming a robot. Rather, it's about realizing that your true strength lies in your ability to control your impulses and focus on what truly matters: your relationships, your long-term satisfaction, and your personal development. Imagine being able to keep up that intense, meaningful connection with someone incredible without being distracted by fleeting desires. You can pull back, collect your breath, and realize that the deeper connection you can build with the person you care about is more valuable than the immediate satisfaction when you practice Stoic self-control. In a society full of distractions, Stoicism teaches us to center oneself, to think things through before passing judgment, and to weigh the consequences of our choices. Think back to a time when you were seduced and fully involved. How did it feel after that? Did you feel a sense of emptiness, regret, or guilt? Consider how things might be different if you could stop. Realize that impulse is fleeting, and make a decision that aligns with your values. The secret to practicing Stoic self-control is realizing that the lasting is always more fulfilling than the immediate. In addition to conquering your urges, self-control helps you regain control over your life. You get control back over your time, energy, and focus. Instead of giving in to impulsive desires, you channel that energy into building lasting connections and making improvements to your life that will provide you long-term fulfillment. It all boils down to investing on the things that are most crucial. You're setting yourself up for a future with more solid, self-reliant connections and a greater sense of self-worth by practicing Stoic self-control. Just think of how much more fulfilling your love life would be if you used that energy toward something real, lasting, and significant. 2. Redirect your energy into a healthy habit. Have you ever wondered why certain people seem to have an infinite amount of energy? They find time and energy to spend with the people they care about despite their constant movement, pursuit of their hobbies, and involvement in important endeavors. You could experience fatigue in the interim, as if your energy is being depleted by unhelpful habits. Think about the last time you felt fully alive. When your body was energized, your mind was totally focused, and your spirit was in tune. Maybe it was an activity that made you feel fantastic, a long conversation with a loved one, or a project you were very passionate about. You're not just going through the motions, you're living in those moments. But how easy is it to get into habits that drain you instead of energizing you? As a temporary fix for boredom or stress, many people resort to unhealthy behaviors like masturbating. However, rather than providing you with energy, this leaves you feeling depleted and makes you crave more of the same. Therefore, one of the best ways to break the pattern is to focus your energies on forming positive habits. Think back to a time when you were completely absorbed in something that excited you. Maybe it was a hobby, a passion, or a personal goal that took up all of your attention. Because you were so focused and committed, time seemed to go by quickly. What if you invested the same amount of energy in something valuable every single day? Instead of pursuing something that drains you, what if you invest your energy in a habit that not only aids in your development, but also brings you closer to your true self? The reality is that each of us has a finite amount of daily energy to devote. So, how will you choose to spend it? Every time you engage in poor habits, you're wasting time that could be spent on something that truly makes your life better. Whether you want to acquire a new skill, improve relationships, pursue personal growth, or get in shape, healthy habits are the foundation of long-term enjoyment. In essence, refocusing your energy alters how you engage with the outer world. Instead of utilizing your energy for a temporary, fleeting relief, you invest it in something that aligns with your values and long-term goals. Imagine waking up each morning with a sense of purpose, knowing that you're investing in your own growth and building a bright future. Imagine your own acts bringing you energy instead of exhaustion. The purpose of refocusing your energy is not to ignore your desires, but to make sure they align with the life you truly want to create. So, what positive habit might you develop today? What would it feel like to replace a small negative habit with one that improves your mood and connects you to the person you want to be? 3. Stay busy and engage in meaningful activities. Let's be honest for a moment. How many times have you been bored and ended up idly looking through your phone or doing nothing? It is easy to fall into that trap, isn't it? You don't feel like accomplishing anything, so you fall into a habit you're trying to break? Or worse, you get lost in your own thoughts. The power of boredom is immense. It might lead you in undesirable paths and provide useless diversion to fill the gaps in your life. However, the truth is that boredom is not a negative thing. It can be your greatest ally if you know how to use it. Staying busy and engaging in meaningful activities is one of the simplest ways to keep your mind active and avoid harmful habits. Consider a period when you were completely absorbed in something you loved, like a creative project, a hobby, or even a job that demanded your whole focus. You had no time to think about anything else because you were so preoccupied with the task at hand. You want to use that motivation and that concentration every day. When you're engaged in something meaningful, your body and mind are actively working towards something that makes you happy. How frequently do you schedule time for the relationships that have the greatest significance in your life? Do you seize the chance to spend time with someone you care about? Or do you give in to the allure of boredom? What if you turn that boredom into an opportunity to spend time with a loved one, partake in a happy pastime, or get closer to a personal goal? Engaging in worthwhile activities improves your life instead of just killing time. Volunteering, picking up a new skill, working on a passion project, exercising, or even planning an enjoyable activity with a loved one could all be part of this. What matters is that you are choosing to devote your time to worthwhile pursuits instead of meaningless distractions. Here's where the magic happens. The more time you devote to worthwhile pursuits, the less room bad habits have to grow. Your mood will improve, your concentration will improve, and most importantly, you will feel more fulfilled. You'll realize that life is too precious to be wasted on short-lived, pointless vacations. So, how are you going to maximize your time today? How can you engage with the things and people that bring you joy? You have a choice, and you'll want to flee less if you give your life meaning. 4. Reframe your thinking. Have you ever found yourself thinking negatively? It's impossible to escape, isn't it? You convince yourself that you're not good enough, or that you'll never be able to break your patterns, and you keep believing the same things. These kinds of thoughts often make it harder to stop the very thing you're attempting to change, and it's annoying. The issue is that your thoughts shape your reality, thus changing your point of view can change everything. Let me take you back for a moment to a period of your life when you were in a deep and meaningful relationship. When did you experience intense love for the first time? The excitement, the energy, the way it all seemed so real? But eventually life gets tough, and before you know it, the original flame has gone out. We may even commit the error of believing that we are not worthy of love or that it is hard. We are changing our world in a way that stops us from progressing if we do that. This also applies to the habit you're trying to break. When you think you can't resist the urge to indulge, you're actually fostering that habit. You are creating a self-fulfilling prophecy. But what if you started to think that you were capable of overcoming those fleeting desires? Instead of viewing every small success as an indication that you're failing, what if you saw them as stepping toward being the person you want to be? Understanding that your past mistakes do not define you is the first step in rephrasing your views. Your habits do not define you, no matter how ingrained they are. If you have given in to temptation and are now engaged in a vicious cycle of guilt or shame, you need to shift your perspective. Think of it as a rewriting of your love story, with you controlling the script and choosing how it will play out. Instead of seeing yourself as weak or powerless, you begin to acknowledge your capacity for change. We begin to view the other person differently when we shift our perspective on a connection. Perhaps things aren't as good as they once were, or perhaps they have hurt us in the past. But by changing our viewpoint, we open up possibilities for healing and growth. This also applies to your personal routines. By altering your approach to difficulties, you allow yourself to create, modify, and form new habits that support you in reaching your goals. Consider what it would be like to think that you could manage these desires. Imagine waking up each day, knowing that you are stronger than the desires that once controlled you, and feeling proud of yourself. What if you saw a mistake not as a setback, but as an opportunity to learn and do better for the future? It is not about ignoring the challenges. Rather, it is about choosing to focus on the positive, the growth and the possibilities that every day presents. Your love story, both with others and with yourself, is a new chapter every day. You also have the pen in your hands. Take control, alter the narrative, and start to see yourself as the protagonist of the journey. You are beginning a new chapter that will bring you closer to the connections and life you desire each time you shift your point of view. 5. Build a support system. When did you experience true love for the first time? That feeling that you are so closely connected to someone that you know you can share everything with them? Now picture the strength of that connection, how it helped you get through tough times, how it lifted your spirits when you were feeling down, and how it made you feel like you were never alone. Relationships, whether sexual or platonic, have the incredible ability to make us feel supported and understood. But like in love relationships, building a support system is essential to stopping negative behaviors. Trying to interrupt the cycle, whether it's a habit like masturbating or something else entirely, can be very isolating. You can think that you are the only one experiencing it, and that no one else can identify with you. However, the truth is that you don't have to do it alone. Just like a great relationship helps you navigate life's challenges, having a solid support system can be essential while trying to change. Think back to a period in your life when you were in a committed relationship or even just had a very important, close friend. You weren't left to carry the burden alone, were you? You had someone who was always there for you, someone you could confide in, and someone who listened. Such support is transformative in addition to being effective. It allows you to grow, become more transparent, and display your vulnerability without fear of repercussion. Now think about how you can utilize the same concept to break your habits. Building a support system requires more than just having someone to cheer you on when things are going well. It means surrounding yourself with people who understand your predicament, who can help you get through tough times, and who will keep you accountable when you start to falter. Have you ever gone out to someone and discovered that just talking to them made sense? A friend, relative, or even a therapist might have been the person. In any case, you realize that you weren't the only one carrying the load. That is a strong support system's strength. When you are with people who care about you, make space for you and encourage your growth. You start to feel less alone and more in control. It takes more than just talking to others to build a support system. You also need to actively engage with those who provide you encouragement. You need to be around by people who inspire you to be a better version of yourself, and who push you to conquer the challenges in your life. Whether it's a mentor, a group of friends, or even an online community, you should surround yourself with people who will hold you accountable, and who will join you in celebrating your successes. Both love and support have the power to bring people together, which makes them powerful. It reminds us that we are not on this journey alone. Just as love has the power to change relationships, so too can a support system change your life. Who can you contact today then? As you break away from behaviors that no longer serve you, who can you turn to for support? This is not something you have to face alone. The proper individuals may help you become the best version of yourself, just like in romantic relationships. Therefore, create that support network, rely on it. And keep in mind that every great love story has its share of vulnerable, transformative, and connecting moments. Conclusion. There you have it then. More than merely a theory, Stoicism is a way of life that can assist you in breaking bad habits. Impulses and addictions don't have to rule you. You possess the ability to make wiser decisions and create a life that is consistent with your core beliefs. Start exercising self-control, refocus your energies, and create a life that truly fulfills you if you're prepared to take the first step. Until we cross paths again, thank you for watching.